This
Okay.
conference will now be recorded.
I apologize for that. I keep not remembering to do that, and it's my fault. So why update it? The plan is effective for 8 years, and it expires in February of 2024. So we have to. If we don't have an effective comprehensive plan or municipal plan, the city council is really hamstrung in what they can be doing, and so is the planning commission, and so is the rest of our government. So counting backwards, our city plan 2024 adoption timeline looks more or less like this. February 2024 is not a good time for the city council to be trying to adopt a large document like this because of budget season. So most of January and most of December are taken up by budget requests and ironing all that out at the city council level. So our intention is for a final city plan to be adopted by December of 2023. Working backwards from there, there are notice requirements and hearing requirements that put public hearings on a full, complete draft in front of the city council, and before that in front of the planning commission between September and November of 2023. Working back again, that puts us in sort of the May to August 2023 timeline for discussion and editing of parts of a draft and then a full draft by the planning commission, additional feedback from our volunteer committees, additional feedback from our staff departments, and additional feedback from the public, which then puts us back now to the February to May timeline, which is where we're getting our initial input. So public meetings, committee input, department input, starting to work and circulate some drafts of both the sections and some objectives would be some of the goals included in the sections, and the beginning of the review of those sections and objectives by the planning commission. So while it feels like February 2024 is a long time from now, it isn't.
It's not.
No. So getting just a little bit into some of our knowns. We have some knowns in our population and housing. We know that our population in South Burlington is very likely to grow by about 1.5% per year. There isn't a lot that we can do about that right now, even if we wanted to make that much higher or much lower. That's not something that's really in our control in the short term. Along with that, the average number of homes added per year between 1980 and 2021 has been 143. In more recent years, it's been more like 100, 150, 160, and has been going up slightly over time. We have had quite a few in the last few years with the development of City Center and some other large developments, but the average over time has been trending slightly upward. The overall housing mix still doesn't add up correctly, does it? I thought I fixed it. Has been 49% single family, 6% duplex, and oh no, that's right, 45%.
100%?
Equals 100.
Does it 100%? Oh my God, I've just been staring at the slide for too long. Which looks more or less like that, with the navy blue being single family, the gray being multifamily, and the duplex being the light blue. And that's the overall housing mix. However, the housing mix that has been added since the year 2000 is much more overwhelmingly multifamily. The light gray again is multifamily, with the navy being single family and the blue being duplex. There's a lot of numbers on this slide. This presentation will be posted on our city plan website if you want to dig into it. But the information that I wanted to present here is that our population is growing, but it is also diversifying. It is diversifying racially, it is diversifying linguistically. We have approximately 11% of residents are foreign born, and the median age is expected to decline slightly between 2020 and 2023. We don't have updated numbers for 2023 yet on that. South Burlington is not aging as much as many places in Vermont, but it is still aging.
Can I just point out, I don't know if you said it, but 24% of houses
Yeah.
or households also have a person with a disability.
Yeah.
I I don't know if you had read that line, but
I
just,
hadn't, no,
I just thought it was really important, especially for transportation.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was just really struck by that. I was surprised by that number.
Yeah, and disability is physical disability. There's a whole range
There's a
of
yes.
disabilities.
But still.
But still, yes.
Yeah, 1 in 4, 25. Yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate it. So just a little bit of information we have about our land use in the city. Approximately 50%, about 51% is either conserved, publicly owned, or under regulatory restriction that makes it more difficult to develop. And then about 41% of the city are areas that are paved and or built land. So that's not to say it's sort of wall-to-wall asphalt, but if you have a house lot that has a house on it, that would be considered part of that 41%. Since 2010, approximately 85% of new housing approved, not necessarily built, because we still have a good number of developments that have been approved in the previous 10 years or so that haven't been fully built. But about 85% are either within or immediately adjacent to the city's transit overlay district. And why that's important is we take that as both access to public transportation, but also a proxy for density. Because generally speaking, our public transit system is running through some of the more dense areas of our city. A little bit more information about transportation. Of the city's about approximately 8,800 households, about approximately 750 have no vehicle. And then the other numbers in there are about, the takeaway in my mind is how Chittenden County functions as an ecosystem. There are a lot of people who live here, who work in Burlington. There are a lot of people who work in Burlington, who live in Burlington, who work in Essex, who live in Essex and work in Shelburne. The whole area functions like one transportation system. I just wanted to include a little discussion of this just to point out that thinking of South Burlington as, you can't put a wall around South Burlington. You can't sort of think of it in isolation. It has to be thought about in conjunction with all of our neighboring municipalities. I just think it's striking that about 2,600 people both live and work in South Burlington. So there are many more people who live here who work somewhere else, and people who live somewhere else and work here than do both in the city of South Burlington. So just a few pieces of information about the plan. We are considering the plan to be an update and enhancement to the 2016 plan. There's a lot of good goals and a lot of good information in the 2016 plan. We're not sort of throwing that out. We're enhancing what we can. We're intensifying some of the goals, adding some more measurable metrics, things like that. But we're not starting over. This isn't a blank slate. In 2022, the City Council adopted a climate action plan. The goals and measurable objectives from that plan will be included in the 2024 plan. 2024 city plan. We're not going to be kind of reworking that whole thing, because that would just be retreading the same ground, and it doesn't need to happen. We plan to strive to qualify as an enhanced energy plan. That is something that is important at the state level, and it involves some of what the city can do and we have the power to do, and how we get some funding and all sorts of other mechanisms from the state. And then the last thing is that we plan to make use of the studies and reports undertaken since the adoption of the 2016 plan, and a few that were before the 2016 plan that didn't get fully integrated. The city of South Burlington is lucky to have a pretty robust budget for things like studies and consultants that many places do not. So our intention is to make the best use of that and incorporate all the work that has been done in the previous 8 years and put it into the new plan. The sort of logical next step to that is that we are also intending this 2024 city plan to identify future needs for planning and consulting work. So in some ways, the plan will make a lot of policy statements, but will also be a plan to make more plans, identifying needs, places where we need more information, identifying places that we need some more data to make thoughtful decisions, and moving forward with that over the following 8 years or so. So The core of our plan, as with the 2016 plan, is the vision and goal statements. There were 4 statements in the current plan, in the 2016 plan, and the 4 that the Planning Commission and City Council have drafted as drafts for the 2024 plan are very similar, a little bit reorganized and intensified. So the first is to be inclusive, fair, and just. The second is to be human focused. Third is to be climate resilient. And fourth, to be opportunity oriented. And there's more information about all of these on our city website. But the intention is that these are our guiding principles that won't have individual sections in the finished plan, but will run as threads throughout. You should be able to open any section of the plan. You know, you open the wastewater section and you can see how we're addressing these 4 guiding principles. So just a little bit of housekeeping logistics, the discussion ground rules. Please treat everybody with respect, value a diversity of opinions and views. Direct comments you have to our facilitator who's here, Joe, and not necessarily to each other, and critique ideas rather than individuals. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who has a little bit of a warm-up exercise.
Okay, hello everybody. Again, my name is Joe Segali. Glad to be here. I've lost count of all the meetings, but and a little bit about me really quickly. I retired from the Vermont Agency of Transportation at the end of June. I was the Director of Policy Planning and Research. So this is one topic I'm actually pretty familiar with, but it's not really for me to tell you all about it. I'm here to listen to all of you, but I just to let you know I do have that background. So the way that we're going to start is we're going to use this online tool called Mentimeter, and I'm going to ask a few questions just to kind of get the ball rolling, and then we'll have an open discussion about how transportation and mobility relate to the goals, and that's just how we structured it for the evening. So what you need to do right now is go to the browser on your phone or at home on your computer, or use your phone at home as well, and type in menti.com, MENTI.com. And when you'll see the screen pop up that looks like that on the right, that image on the right. So again, it's menti, MENTI.com. And then when you get there, enter in the code 46124292. And we're going to need to pull that up too.
Yep.
Again, it's 46124292. And I know, there's familiar faces here now after these meetings, and so some of you have already done this, and the questions are going to be similar, but it helps us focus on what we're going to talk about.
You need to load it to the Mentimeter.
Okay, you just need to type in Menti. So you see a login.
Just go into the, yeah.
My presentations, this should be me. All right, so you guys should be seeing this on your screen, the start of the questions here in a second. Sorry, we didn't have time to set up just before the meeting started, so a little bit behind.
Do we need to click on the heart?
You can if you want, if you're feeling like, special tonight.
No, I didn't.
I
did too. I
Okay.
didn't know what would happen.
I think we love it.
Okay, so.
You need to go back to the Mentimeter to the Google, to Chrome, to the bottom. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, present.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is the first question. Hopefully it's popping up on your phone or on your computer at home. What activities do you do in South Burlington? And you can answer more than one. Pick anything that you do here in South Burlington. we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 15 or 16 people. Looks like everybody,
I don't know how many are online.
yeah, I just kind of eyeballed it. So looks like everybody's responded. Interesting that fewer people work in South Burlington than, than live here. And that's kind of consistent with the information that Kelsey showed you earlier and how you guys are part of the greater regional, ecosystem. But the top ones are you live here, you shop, or you recreate and socialize. So that's good. It's just a snapshot of folks in the room. Next question, it's kind of goofy, but what one word best describes your mood at this moment? And you can actually put in 3 words. And we'll get a word cloud that just shows how people are feeling tonight. Are you having a hard time
I just want to pick a nice word.
getting in touch with your feelings? Everybody needs to get in touch with their feelings before we start this meeting.
Healing?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That was, yeah. It was,
Is this all working? Okay, everybody's getting. Oh, multimodal. There's a fun word that only transportation geeks would put up. Inquisitive, that's great. Tired, that comes up, I think it's the time of day. Hopeful, that's great for a plan, a long-term plan. Wanting to be hopeful. A little late to the table, but it's good that you're here. Lots of folks are hopeful yet tired. That's okay. It's hard to see. Interested, great. Wanting to be hopeful, content, confident, great. Those are all excellent answers. Anybody else? I think I see 13 responses.
Oh, it's over there. It's at the bottom.
fill the glass halfway.
Curious too.
So in this, you can respond to this question by just put anything you want in the response. It's not one word. It can be a sentence or a phrase, short paragraph. But in what ways should the comprehensive plan support transportation needs? I know that you can also flip that around. In what way can transportation use to be support the goals that we're going to be talking about shortly? There's always this back and forth of transportation, right? Transportation in and of itself is not really its purpose. It's really meant to support overall society goals. So we should see some answers pop up here pretty quick. That's weird.
You have to hit it says please press enter to show answers
Where did you see that?
at the bottom.
Ooh, they're secret.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Accommodating pedestrians, make it easier to get from place to place is something other than single occupancy vehicles, more dedicated bike lanes, multimodal, set goals and layout plan for improvements for safety, connectivity, access, lots of good thoughts. It should encourage walking and use of public transit. It should focus on pedestrian safety and multimodal. There's some common theme. Multimodal, pedestrian access, common theme here in transit. It's what I don't see up there is like if we were doing this 30 years ago, fixed traffic congestion would probably be like the number one thing, but we've all come a long ways in 30 years thinking about transportation, I think. Okay, that's great. So I just want to revisit the vision and goals again quickly, just to kind of get them in your brain, but starting with inclusive, fair, and just, and that's about creating opportunities for all residents and visitors. I think, combining all that, it's, the overall term might be equity, human focused. So that's about investing in a high quality, human scale built environment, climate resilient, emphasizing sustainability for long-term viability of a clean and green city. And then opportunity oriented is being a supportive and engaged member of the regional and statewide community. So this next question is going to ask you to rank these, yes. And rank them relative to transportation. And it's really about, what do you want to talk about first, but where do you think the strongest connection is when you think about transportation, which might be tough because, and I know I'm biased on this topic, but it seems it touches so many things. But think about, what the purpose of these goals are, their descriptions, and where's the strongest connection when you think about transportation, and take it from there. One of the things about this poll is it might, influence people that haven't answered yet when they see what the responses are, but don't let it do that. Just answer the way that you feel is correct. We're almost there. We're almost at 16. Yeah, so I think that's everybody. So let me just write this down. Human focused. Okay. That's great. Would anybody want to just answer really quickly or give why do you think human focus was top of your list? Anybody online? And we can move on and get out of this too and get everybody up on the screen. Yes.
Everybody makes a decision about transportation in the moment and based on your needs.
Right. Yep. It's about humans at the end of the day, right? What about anybody else? Just quick thoughts of why you think human focus rose to the top.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we're all used to always being in our cars and moving in our cars, which is perhaps the most inhuman form of interaction. Everyone's sitting in a sealed up. We're talking about walkways, we're talking about bikeways, we're talking about public transport. It's all about interacting, guys. At least having, if not talking to people, having a visual sense of proximity.
Right. That's great. That's great. Okay. So, we're going to start with human focus, investing in a high quality human scale built environment. And, my question to you is, when you're thinking about transportation and mobility and supporting a human focused community, what's the city doing well with transportation in that regards? What's working well from your perspective? What are the assets that the city has when it comes to transportation is another question, another way to think about
We
it.
have a great bike path network. and
Great
growing.
bike network. Yeah, and go ahead and introduce yourself. Sorry, I
Sorry,
forgot.
I'm Michael Mittag. I'm
Yeah.
on the planning commission and I live down near Swift Street.
Thanks, Michael.
We have a lot of roads and we have an interstate going right through the middle.
Donna, can you just state your name?
Yeah.
Donna Laban, I'm also on the planning commission and the bike ped committee.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the roads are an important asset because, they can also be multimodal. They don't just have to be, they move the buses and people walk along the roads and people bike along them. Maybe the environment needs improvement in that regards, but ultimately they were public rights away. And what other assets do you think South Burlington has with transportation? Yes, and introduce yourself.
Ryan Doyle, citizen. I think parts of our city have good density, and that's really good bones for promoting more human scale transportation.
Right, it's an opportunity to take advantage of, especially when you think of the multifamily, the increase in multifamily over the last, most recent years. It's an opportunity to take advantage of for sure. Colin, and actually folks online, Colin, do you want to ask a question?
I was just commenting, that was all. Not sure how the best way to do this is.
Yeah, and actually, let me just say to everyone else online, when you want to speak, just turn on your camera, and that'll clue me in that you want to speak. So
you did the right thing,
yeah,
Colin.
yeah, good instinct on that. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'm pretty impressed by is the fact that the city has dedicated funding that's allocated specifically for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, which is something that's cool to see. The pot kind of stays that area and can't get kind of siphoned away to stuff. I think that's quite a good asset from the funding side of things.
Yes, great. And you had this vote that happened, was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, it was yesterday. You're supporting the east-west connection over the interstate. The citizens are, and so that's really impressive. That's awesome. Any other thoughts on advantages? What's working well? Yes. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jessica Luis, I'm on the planning commission, and I guess I feel lucky to be in a community with all the people and all the knowledge to like even figure out like where there are problems, there are safety issues at these traffic lights, or, all on Dorset Street, the traffic lights could be timed so we can get through better and deal with congestion. And, oh, there's a missing connection to a neighborhood over here, so let's get a grant to like put in the connection. I just feel like there's a lot of like people and staff and that are kind of all working together to make the network better. And I don't know that that's the case in all communities.
Yeah, that's a really great observation. I think it's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that, that it's an asset to have professionals and others working on, the network and trying to improve it. And there's actually, in Chittenden County, I think you have a lot of advantages, especially the relationship with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission can bring, money to the table to help evaluate all these things and expertise as well. So that is really an asset. Anybody else want to say something positive about transportation and human scale in South Burlington?
You can walk to the airport if you want.
Yeah. And you can take the bus too, actually. Yeah. So yeah, the airport really is an intermodal facility, right? Where the different walking, biking, transit, all come together. So that is an advantage. What about if you think about what's going on, I don't know, any trends in transportation that you might be aware of that the city maybe should be taking advantage of? Any innovations that you would like to see here in South Burlington that maybe aren't here yet? Yes.
Off-road pedestrian connectivity.
Off-road, like, do you mean in like
rather than along busy roadways, away from busy roadways,
Okay.
designated spaces for bike ped users.
Okay. Yes.
Mike Scanlon, about bus transport. Maybe the technology exists. This is more actually a question than maybe a suggestion. Other places I've been, I've seen where you have apps which allow you to know exactly when the bus is coming.
We have that.
You have that. So
We
good.
have that.
Great. So I
They
just
do have
need to, I can download that. Great.
Yeah.
Transit, that's what it is.
That's the cool deal.
Cool, excellent. And the other thing is I've seen where to maximize the speed of buses, meaning lights are programmed that when the bus approaches, it turns green. So therefore you're otherwise the buses and the cars are pretty much traveling at the same
Right.
speed. But if they always give the optimal green light to the bus, it makes buses a little more attractive because you can actually cut down your travel time.
Right. Yeah. Bus priority. I don't know if that's probably been studied here at some point or another, but it's something to keep on the table for sure.
GMT
Yeah.
GMT have it on their buses right now, but they don't use it because they feel like it's inequitable
They feel like it's inequitable.
to like have control over those things.
Well, it helps the traffic that's going the same direction too.
And what was
Right.
your name? Sorry.
Yes.
Nick Anderson.
Thanks.
Barb, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I did. Barbara Service. I live in Summer Woods, and I want to follow up on an earlier comment about pedestrians. And I know the Bike Ped Committee has heard this before, but I want to make sure it gets on this record. I think we do some amazing things around accommodating bicycles, but we really need to do more about pedestrians. And some of the places where our really able cyclists can ride in the bike lanes, the others are still riding on sidewalks, and it gets kind of sticky at times. So I think we can look at that as we look at opportunities. And maybe it's as simple at times as putting some signs. If you walk, and I tried this afternoon to remember the name of that section and I can't, but that really lovely path that you can walk through the woods over near Swift and Spear, that you have to be, as a pedestrian, you have to be really careful because the cyclists come racing down that hill. And so maybe it's just some simple signage to remind them not to run over the pedestrians, and that we sort of share that space. But I think some more places like that where pedestrians can really enjoy the beautiful parts of our city.
Great comment. And you got a thumbs up from Wayne Senville. While you said that, did you want to add anything else, Wayne? Okay. Wait, here we go.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I've got one thing that puzzles me about South Burlington. I've been here for about a year and a half after living in Burlington for 30 years. And I live in South Village, so I'm getting very familiar with Spear Street. So one thing I don't understand is how it seems like development comes in before pedestrian and bike improvements are made, as opposed to having them occur simultaneously or having the sort of infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians in place first before the development gets built out. So right now on Spear Street, as probably everyone knows, there's lots of bicyclists and people walking along the side of the street, along the side of a very busy artery with lots of new development popping up. And I would think that a plan policy or priority would be to have the infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists in place simultaneously with the new development.
Great, thanks. Good comment. Yes, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Nora Senical. I think one thing that feels would be great to figure out how to best to do this is there's a bus line that goes up and down Shelburne Road, but there's not a connectivity, through public transportation within South Burlington from like Shelburne Road to like the Dorset area, the Swift Street area to get to this, like this area has all like the doctor's offices and all the public buildings. None of that's on Shelburne Road. So if you were gonna put housing on Shelburne Road and those people are relying on the bus, they're not gonna get to, other than the grocery store and the pharmacy, they're not gonna be able to get to other types of services by the bus, so.
Well, so are you saying it's because there's no direct bus route
Well, yeah,
from
you have to
Shelburne
go all
Road?
the way
You gotta
down
go
to
to
the city.
Burlington.
You gotta go to Burlington
Yeah.
and change and then come back up. So yeah, you can get by bus, that's not true, but like,
It
it's
takes a long
not,
time.
it takes a long time, so I'd like to see a development of within South Burlington, maybe some way to connect the neighborhoods without relying on that other structure that connects everything to Burlington.
Nora, what was your last name?
Senical, Senecal.
So where else? I mean, we sort of naturally went into where there's room for improvement, I would say. And so where else? Again, thinking about human scale, in transportation in South Burlington, where's there some room for improvement? Where else? Yes.
Bob Britt. One of the areas is our city has changed over time. We have a bunch of arterial roads, such as Heinsberg Road, Dorset. I don't know if that's officially arterial, but it should be. Spear Street. There's roads that once were rural and now have neighborhoods throughout and have been built in. So the roads originally were designed to get people as quickly as possible from outlying towns to South Burlington or Burlington's retail businesses, restaurants, etc.
Right.
But now with all the people and walking, bicyclists, etc., we need to slow the speeds and take back the neighborhoods so that people can safely get to where they want to go when they're not in a vehicle.
Right.
So, I mean, that to me is human focused.
Absolutely. As the land use has changed around those roads, the roads need to change as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
So traffic calming
Yeah.
and other and speed reductions.
Right. Okay, thanks. Yes, and please introduce yourself.
Dan Albrecht,
Hey, Dan.
R-E-C-H-T. Thinking about the GMT is, well, it is what it is, better than things that used to be. It's gotten, it's expanded a little bit and broadly, but within South Burlington, it still functions under a limited way and under a assumption that people are all commuting into downtown Burlington. And it might have been 20, 30 years ago. But now we have much more east-west.
Right.
and I've talked to the city council about this, and it just seems like we're a big enough city and a growing enough city that why we don't have our own internal shuttle system to do what a lot of people do all the time, which is go up Shelburne Road, cut on 189, over to Kennedy and Dorset, and that way, and eventually you head up to the airport to Route 2, and that's the way things work. And that's also incidentally where, yes, we've had job growth on Shelburne Road. But in terms of big new major employers, they're in the eastern part of the city. They're at the Tilly Medical Industrial Complex, which sites we're all getting older in this room. So it's only going to keep growing.
Right.
So that's one thing I see a real disconnect in.
Yeah, that's a great observation.
And how the bus system works and all that. And we can keep sitting around going, well, GMT, and we'll get some money from Uncle Sugar in DC. No, if we believe in it, step up and let's do it ourselves. Thanks.
Okay. Yes.
Ryan Doyle. As much as the highway helps people get in and out of South Burlington or past it, it feels like a really big barrier to other places in South Burlington.
Which highway? Do you mean the interstate?
Interstate 89. Yeah. So not just as a bike ped user, but even as a driver. It's crazy. Spear Street's right over there, but to get to it is incredibly difficult. The neighborhoods that are trapped on the other side of the highway there, or the need to, at least from this location, to go past two interstate exits traffic-wise just to get over somewhere else, whether I'm passing Kennedy to the south where 189 is, or going through exit 14. And then certainly as a bike ped user going south up and down a really giant hill, grade-wise, but the lack of interconnectivity to both sides of the highways feels very strange for a community.
Right. Of course, the interstate went through before there was, it was a greenfield.
Yeah,
for sure back then, but it's not anymore. Colin, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're sort of people start touching some of these kind of things. I guess I've sort of found that, from a kind of broad perspective, if I want to go somewhere in my car, I can go pretty much anywhere at any time. I don't really have to think about it. And I like it. There's that kind of, it's like for driving, there's that kind of, it's spatially and temporally consistent. You can go anywhere at any time. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a useful framework for sort of thinking about other modes too. Like, for example, with bicycling or pedestrianism, a lot of times when I want to try to go for my bike, or like there's some places I can go very easy with a bicycle or very easy on foot. There's other places where 80% of the route is super nice, super great. Off-road is really nice. There's great like pedestrians everywhere, but it's that remaining 20% that makes the entire trip essentially infeasible on a bike or as a pedestrian, unless you have a very high risk tolerance for being hit by automobiles. And similarly with the buses, as we said, it's like there's some corridors we have good buses, but people already mentioned you can't necessarily east to west. Or also I'd like to talk like the temporal as well. Like the buses work pretty nicely if you're a 9 to 5 commuter, but the second you try to make trips on weekends or later in the evenings, the frequencies just drop off a cliff and you find yourself waiting downtown for an hour plus to get the bus back. And I think, I guess I would love to see in the plan a sort of talk about kind of shoring up all those, making sure that we have kind of a network for all modes that kind of works at different times of day and across different neighborhoods, and not just kind of focus on this particular project is great for this one area, but sort of think of it in terms of a network that works across space and time, so that you can kind of just hop on the bus or hop on your bike without having to think about, can I get to where I'm trying to get to, or is this the right time of day to use the bus and stuff like that.
Thanks.
Or lighting for that matter if you're biking too. If there's no lights, it's kind of hard to go in the night.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, great, excellent, thank you. Other thoughts where room for improvement, again, thinking about human scale? Yes, go ahead. I'll get you.
Yeah, Nick Anderson again. I think kind of following along that line a little bit is I think we really need to focus heavily on winter snow clearing and prioritizing the human scale components of it. So really trying to, think of, and then maybe it falls more under the equity side piece of really prioritizing the sidewalks either first or at least at the same time, so that you don't have to think about, oh, could I walk today? What's the conditions like? Is that crossing going to be terrible? Is there going to be a 3-foot snowbank there? I think winter snow clearing should be a high priority.
Do you feel like it's a problem now that the sidewalks aren't getting the attention that they need?
I think you're saying timing. They should go
Timing,
first.
going out at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So it isn't.
They do eventually get plowed, but they're lower priority to
And then I think one of the big things which we've talked with Erica about is equipment. Right sizing your equipment or right typing your equipment for the human scale approach. Like, maybe that 10-foot wide snow plow that drives 40 mile an hour isn't necessarily the right tool that's for something that's a little smaller. Maybe that's where brushes and other things might come into play.
Right.
So I think, if we really truly want people to just walk out their door and walk or bike to the shops or whatever, they shouldn't have to think about what's my sidewalk condition going to be to get there.
Yeah, I'm going to go here, Michael, and I'll come back to you. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add, just again, thinking about that Shelburne Road corridor, because I know that's been identified as an area of more development, is just thinking, kind of like you said, kind of made me think of this as crossing these major arteries. It's dangerous. People get hit on Shelburne Road all the time. And it's not so safe, honestly, in lots of places. Even then, if you were to bike from, coming from the Orchards neighborhood, getting across and getting to other bike paths, it's doable, right? It's not, but again, safety-wise, it's not.
Yeah, I think Colin's comment just about sort of a system that works all the time and the barriers that are there that are making that impossible right now, I think this is all the same theme. I feel like, but go ahead, Michael.
I was going to give you, I've lived in two places in Montreal, one westbound and one on the South Shore, St. Lambert. Both of them prioritize sidewalk snow clearance. They're out first, especially in westbound. They're out from 4 a.m. in the morning and they plow at a terrific rate. They go fast. They cover a huge amount of sidewalk before the roads are cleared. And the other thing I wanted to mention was there is a gap in our public transit here. And it's from Veterans Memorial Park north to Kennedy. From Kennedy north, you've got public transit, but that piece, and a lot of people are using Veterans Memorial Park for all kinds of reasons. They, in the summer, play all kinds of sports there. In the winter, they skate and play hockey there. So
is that down on Dorset Street?
It's Dorset Street from Swift north.
Yeah, right.
The major gap.
I live back behind that park, and when I first started thinking public transport, it was not an issue because I have to walk to the Dorset Kennedy Street as the first place where I can jump on a bus. So it's either I get on a bike, but then you always have to anticipate whether conditions allow it, or it's into a car.
And there's a lot to connect from there up to here. All right. Trader Joe's or Healthy Living or EMS or the city.
I feel like it's the same issue you're talking about, Dan, that just lack of internal city circulation by transit.
Cross city transit.
Yes, go ahead, Amanda.
Amanda Holland, Bike Ped Committee. One of the things, and it kind of that I was thinking of when people are talking, is it ties a little bit into inclusivity, or maybe thinking of trying to make sure that we're being ADA compliant, but also with the maintenance piece is having the improvements to getting new facilities and closing gaps, but also maintaining our current systems, making sure that, over time, they go in great, but over time, trees happen, things happen, and now we have infrastructure that's no longer being used. I was thinking when you're doing the snow clearing, I'm like, I was in my head envisioning how many people that I still see walking on the streets, even though it's been plowed. Why? Because it's like so uneven that it becomes just puddles and ice because of drainage issues. So just also thinking of that climate piece of making sure that when we're doing any improvements across the city, that we're thinking of all these different things, but also remembering about the stormwater issue, because there's been a lot of things that get done, then you have, the stormwater can just undo all of our good work.
Right.
Go
ahead, Michael. Yeah.
I didn't really finish my point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that perhaps we, the city of South Burlington, could consult with a city like Westmount to find out how they do it. How do they sequence and how do they time snow clearance in a way that gets the pedestrian sidewalks done first? Because the streets get cleared as well.
Right.
So just a question of maybe consultation.
Yes. Okay. And did you have a comment?
I do, yeah, Ryan Doyle. I think some of the tricky areas are really these mixed intention areas of transportation, these stroads we have by like 189, for example, in Shelburne Road, or this part of Williston Road that are trying to accommodate lots of different vehicle uses as well and are also unfriendly to pedestrians. That it, like the actual intention of that roadway hasn't really been decided, and that creates a lot more chaos for people. That's harder to navigate as a bike ped user, and as drivers who are becoming more timid as they age or they're new, and not really having those things worked out very well after a long time.
Dan, did you? This kind of reminds me a little bit of I think it was at the environmental meeting we had, and the folks were talking about Wilson Road in particular, about room for green space, and which kind of can help address stormwater, can help address the human scale for pedestrian use. It's tough on Wilson Road because there's not a lot of room, right? I mean, well, you could take space from traffic, but that has other
Plenty of room,
limitations.
there's 4 lanes.
And then, then you're, So then
Well,
there'll
that
be a
would
whole other group of people here.
Williston Road Streetscape was part of our the TIF vote the other day.
Oh, and that got, well, there you go. So yes, go ahead.
Well, I think that kind of the equity piece around funding, and maybe it's a construct of true cost, but bike ped funding is kind of like 3 to 5%, maybe I'm wrong, of like the overall kind of road maintenance funding. So it feels like cars are elevated automatically in terms of, or vehicles, roads, in terms of funding, that doesn't feel very equitable to trying to be more human scale. So balancing that, knowing that our stroads do accommodate all the users, that's great, but I feel like we're out of sync in terms of how much funding we put towards road maintenance versus path maintenance and other things.
Right. I mean, I'll raise this issue just because I think if there was other folks here, what you might hear is that, 85 to 90% of trips are made in cars.
Because?
Well, yeah, maybe because of the investment, but, so I just wanted to throw that out there, but Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to echo a point that someone made maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, and that's whether there's a way for South Burlington to look into its own sort of mini public transit network at a smaller scale that would provide some of the linkages that might be beyond the capacity of Green Mountain Transit to be doing, especially, as you have a combination of aging population, you have people who have affordability issues. So, that's something that would be interesting if the plan recommended that the city look into what it takes to develop a small scale system, and whether there are other communities around the country that have something like that in place.
And I think that the city plan can make recommendations like for more plans, right? The studies that need to be done, right, Kelsey?
Plans for more plans.
Yeah, I think have them. I'm gonna go online and so is it Joel? Joel, go ahead.
Hi, this is Joel Klug. I'm on the Bike Ped committee as well. I just wanted to echo the other comments about the transit gaps. And, one solution to fill the transit gaps is what they've done in Montpelier with the on-demand transit system, where you can call a bus on your phone, and then it will come and pick you up and take you anywhere you want. So it's something in addition to the fixed route system.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's called micro transit. Is the buzz term. Yep, go ahead, Michael.
One of the ways you could solve this problem of prioritizing bike and ped is writing it into this plan that pedestrians and bicycles get priority above automobiles. In the old plan, it's just the other way around, but it's up to you now to write it into this plan.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
In the end of the day, I don't think it's Mike Scanlon again, it's either or. I think it's a win-win, because I think, as a friend here was saying, that if you incentivize and make it simpler, whether it's an easier public transportation system by the buses because it's more time efficient, whether the green lights switch for the buses so it's faster on a bus, whether your bike paths are always going to be operable, so it's always an option, that will basically incentivize and draw more people into these other forms of transportation, which is actually a win for the people who choose to stay in cars.
Right.
You go in cars now, as I said, where I live, I go in car because it's the lesser of challenges in time management and things. So I think if it does get prioritized, if we do sort out these to make it more sort of cost efficient, just common sense to use these other approaches, the car drivers also win, because actually you have less traffic, and it's it's the American way. We all win.
Yes.
I just want to bring this up because nobody's brought it up yet. E-bikes are kind of a special consideration because some people consider them too fast for the shared use paths.
Right.
And, you really do need special places on the road for them. And so it kind of goes along with kind of streetscaping, but, downsizing the width of the lanes to allow for wider and better bike lanes that are separated enough that people feel safe on them. So it's kind of a matter of, reducing the size of the travel lanes for cars and trucks so that they slow down too, because that's, they're connected problems. If you have a very wide road, people go a lot faster on it.
Yeah, Mike.
So I don't
introduce yourself.
Mike Simoneau, South Burlington resident. So I don't know if this meeting is the place for this conversation or not, but so all of this conversation seems to be dwelling on internal, moving around inside, the limits of the city.
Yeah.
But there's more of a macro, regional transportation question or agenda. So I don't know whether, this is the place for the micro or whether this is also the place for the macro.
Go ahead with the macro.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I've seen data says, there might only be 13% of our people that work and live in South Burlington. Okay, so that means everybody else moving around and they're in cars. They're going to be in cars. One other thing that's not really transportation, but I saw this today. People were lamenting that only 13%, interestingly enough, of our eligible voters participated in yesterday's election. Okay.
In South Burlington, it was 21.
It was 21. So the number I saw then was off, but one way or another, the reason I'm just going there is that we've got to be mindful in these processes when we are discussing, expressing our thoughts and our ideas for concepts about what to be doing, that there's a majority out there, and we can't just say, oh, too bad you didn't come, you didn't participate. our planning needs to take into consideration the impacts on those other 75 or 80% of the people, whether they're participating or not. It's, they're part of the community. And so I just want to mention that. So getting to the macro thing. Okay, people who are moving in and out of South Burlington, jobs, our workplace environments. 12B, 13, is something that's out there.
Just so everyone knows, you're talking about a new interchange at 116 and 89 is often referred to as 12B.
Yeah, and I'm not here to promote that we should have either one or those two right now, but I am here to promote that we should continue giving those options ongoing study. And this is really long range, plus given the time that it takes, maybe in 10 years, things will have changed so much, we won't need to have a conversation about 12B or 13. But right now, today, we do. We've just, in my opinion, we've got to allow that we may need it at some point in time. You see all the growth that's occurring south of South Burlington, all the hundreds of housing units that are coming online in Heinsberg. Heinsberg Road is going to continue to get more busy. It's important to be able to move, our business community with all of those jobs that are on the east end of the city, how those people will get back and forth to their workplace, how the goods and services will move from that sense of commerce. So our plan should, reflect the fact, I guess most generally, when it comes to the car, we're currently a car-centric society. We'd like to move in the direction where there'd be more sharing of vehicles and traffic and what have you, but we are still car-centric. Those cars could be electric in the future, they could be hydrogen, but people are still going to be, they like the independence of being able to move around. So one of the vision and goals statements in the human focus section reads, focus on safe, resilient, efficient transportation system that, then the word prioritizes is used, that prioritizes pedestrian, bicycle, and transit options ahead of driving. Okay, this is the main point I want to make. As long as you've got 85 or 90% of your people that are moving around in cars, to make a statement that says you're going to prioritize other modes of transportation when 85 or 90% of your population is moving around in cars. So I'm feeling that maybe another word could be used, or that statement could be, restated. I'm supportive. I mean, climate change, everything else, 100%. And the people in the business community are on board with, let's do something to improve the environment. But we've got to recognize what we need in the present as well. I'm sorry to take so long.
No, those are a lot of great comments. And, it's one of the goals is opportunity oriented. And it's about, I think your macro point was, it's not just about moving around in South Burlington. It's about the connections to the, Chittenden County at large and beyond, which is, where goods and services and people work. And there's the transportation system and the highway system is super critical to that.
Ride shares. Yeah, I just want to get that out there too. More ride shares.
So somebody popped up online and then I lost them. Was it Timothy, I think?
Yeah, he left.
Okay, sorry about that. So, before we go on any further, I'm trying to get through these goals. We don't have to necessarily tick them all off, but the one that, just start thinking about inclusive, fair, and just, and the role of transportation in South Burlington sort of helping to make that happen. So, but go ahead and say whatever you want to say, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but just a little bit more focus on that would be good. But I'll start with you and you guys, and I'll just kind of go this way, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think the rideshare thing that Michael brought up as his last point is one worth expanding on because, you know, if you're going to try to create a better transit network, you know, where are all those people should they be coming from? I think you have to have a lot of nodes of park and rides kind of around in Williston and Shelburne and Charlotte and all these other places that can link together a transit network, you know, so, and then in addition to that, you really have to limit parking, you know, and I think the university and the hospital already do that to a very good degree, you know, and I
There's
think
no parking rides in South Burlington, right? I can think of.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
don't think there are, and I think that's an important element in sort of making transit work too, is making it really easier to hop on transit than it is to try to find a parking place.
Go ahead and.
I was thinking along the opportunity-oriented lines. This plan definitely needs to be flexible in terms of future things that don't exist yet. 2016, no one knew that there was going to be a battery electric powered scooter that could take over the world. And so making sure that we're baking into the plan the idea that there may be new modes and new technologies coming that we don't even know about yet and how those happen. Donna mentioned e-bikes, but e-scooters, e-skateboards,
Right.
every micro mobility device
Everything, yeah.
is what we kind of need to be thinking about too. And somehow putting that in the plan that future things could be accommodated and not just kind of roadblocked because they don't exist in the comp plan.
Yeah, do you mind if I skip to Timothy? Timothy, go ahead.
Hi, Joe, thanks. I'm just gonna, excuse me. In regards to Mike Semino's comments, I wanted to speak in support of the idea that if we can keep truck traffic and car volume off of local roads, it may be a better experience for bikers and walkers. And so I also support the concept of an additional interstate exchange that would allow for more efficient traffic using the interstate network and keeping, like I said, some trucks and vehicles off of some of the local roads.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Dan?
Just back to the issue of fair, equitable, and just, and also trying to, a lot of the comprehensive plan and the conversation has talked about, you know, continuing to develop the Shelburne Road and Williston Road corridor. I mean, the outreach on this effort has been good, and it's good to see these series of workshops, but I still haven't really seen targeted outreach for, instead of political signs with a QR code at the door of every single high density residential unit. I mean, I can just see it all up and down Shelburne Road. We have this new apartment, or even at the intersections. So I see it occasionally in Burlington with the bike path survey, or, you know, people can, that's how you got to engage that way. Do it with a QR code. So it's when I think about the engagement as you work on this plan and as all city policies, think about the 40% of the renters. Think about all the people here on market, all these new units. Like, that's how you capture, and not to say that they all don't have, a lot of them will have cars, but a lot of them won't, and as all of us get older too, that's still gonna happen. So think about how you engage with the rental community. And then secondly, try to engage, I don't know if there's a separate business conversation about, is there an internal transportation demand management group within South Burlington that can start working together while the city works on its own internal bus system?
Okay, thanks. Yes.
Bob Britt again. On the opportunity oriented, I just wanted to make sure we got that in about the city needs to be opportunistic and aggressive in pursuing federal infrastructure funding that's coming down the road. So for all types of transportation within the city. So whether the city needs to dedicate more grant writing resources or whatever, I just think it's critical for South Burlington to lead in that area. be opportunistic.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I'll come back around. Yeah, go ahead.
Just around the opportunity part as well is thinking about, I was thinking about what you said about prioritizing. I don't know if it's a bad, I mean, I don't say bad or good, but like, we do have to prioritize decreasing the amount of use of cars in some way, right? Because if we're building up around Chittenden County and those cars are going to want to come in here, right? You know, because we've got a lot of people, we've got to figure out how we're going to get more people either walking, taking the transit, or biking, right? And that's going to take a huge frame shift in terms of education and you know, changing behavior, right? You know, because we've all sort of programmed our lives to like, okay, I got 15 minutes to get here, you know, and you know, right? This is all the basics of life, right? And I think we also have to kind of think about how we're we're a younger, you know, our average age is going younger, right? We have all these kids coming up. Is socializing the kids that you can ride public transportation and educating the parents too, like let them ride the public transportation. Right? You have to get like these multiple generations thinking about, I don't have to get in the car.
Right. Thanks. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you. Going back a little bit, I don't know if this is a thing the city has going really good for it or a thing it doesn't have going really good for it, but there's actually a lot of studies that the city has done and a lot of unimplemented things from those studies. And so I think it's good to be aware of the way we use the information we have going forward, and update it and keeping track of what we are actually checking off our lists as far as things that are already brought up to be dealt with. And to clarify an earlier statement, when I'm talking about bike ped users having space not on busy thoroughfares and the need to specify what we're doing with our strode areas, having so many curb cuts, and this is an old recommendation from a study, having so many curb cuts in high traffic areas where we have more than 30,000 vehicles passing per day, it's dangerous for the cars and drivers. We have so many accidents on the roads out here, but it's incredibly dangerous for bike ped users to be in those areas with so many curb cuts, where again, they don't actually have priority or right of way because the cars have it to turn into all of those curb cuts. And we really have to make designated spaces and prioritize if we're going to let 30,000 cars pass through an area, and how do we facilitate pedestrian and bike users around and away from it and crossing it safely, as opposed to just throwing them into the mix.
Yeah, you know, I'll just say quickly that South Burlington has been doing something quite innovative for a while, and I assume they're still doing it, about encouraging closing curb cuts and consolidating and all of that. And I'll go into the details, but it was really, it's a great model, but it takes time. But I can't remember. So Amanda, and then I don't know if you're.
Yeah.
All right, Colin, I see you up there. I'll come back. I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
I was just going to make the comment that I hope that the plan can, I guess, think about the data, like think of the data that it has and how like we're limited by our data. So in some aspects, I was thinking of it's been brought up more than once of our commuters and like where we go to work, and just knowing that that's, you know, that's not like the whole story to the data. Cause like thinking of myself, if you look at my journey to work data, it's going to say I work in Barrie, but I work at home 4 days a week. So there's like that piece of it where I don't know when that's going to change, but there's probably going to be a mix of that. But also just thinking we can't necessarily always be getting at that. But I know that I'm hoping that through the infrastructure that we have, where we can encourage that when I'm not driving to work, I am using other modes to go to the store, whether it's walking or biking or having my kids go to activities, or I'm going to activities. So I guess like we don't really have information or data to be supporting that, but I hope that we and our plan are noting that we want to be creating networks in the neighborhoods where you don't have to be using your car to go a mile to a service.
Okay, thanks. Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so I guess Mauricio just wanted to talk a little bit about the discussions on the like prioritizing bicycles and pedestrians. And I guess I would be curious about how it's phrased. Are we saying that bicycle pedestrians are overall prioritized modes, or are we saying that improvements should be prioritizing bicycle and pedestrians? Because those are kind of two quite different things, one of which is kind of more extreme than another, even if they sound similarly. Because, I mean, simply put, the road network in Burlington, it has its problems, but it overall is fairly functional, whereas the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is a lot more patchy. So I think, for example, it's definitely possible to have a middle ground where you're saying our goal is to kind of bring the bicycle pedestrian infrastructure kind of up to the same level as the road infrastructure, not which involves prioritizing improvements on it, but that isn't quite the same as saying that those are actually more important as modes. Because I think as much as I love to bike and as much as I like to bike and walk around, I totally understand that, I would be surprised if like that mode share is going to change that much in the next 20 years, 30 years, or foreseeable future. But I think, I guess, yeah, it's just, is the prioritization focusing on improvements or just overall what mode we want more? That's what I was just trying to say.
I think that's kind of helpful.
That is good.
Yeah, I think that's good way to think about it. But
Yeah, I think I too, which I'm not sure I followed through. I just was listening to everyone. 2 comments. Havilah Gagne, also bike ped. One of them is thinking about equity. The pedal assist e-bikes can be a very great way to get from place to place. They're very fast and they're pretty easy to use. They're out of the price range for a lot of people. And so I'm wondering if we could do a study about where we might set up the bike share and where the nodes should be we didn't really have many nodes that I think were next to housing. It was mostly next to businesses and it was connecting to Burlington. It was like a little offshoot. It wasn't really for South Burlington residents as much.
Okay.
So I was doing a study. And then the other thing is Cambridge, the suburb outside of Boston, in their city statute, they said that all like upgrades to streets had to consider bike ped infrastructure, and they had to improve the infrastructure when they were making other improvements. And that's how they step by step improved the infrastructure in their community.
yeah, there's a similar law in Vermont,
Oh.
the complete street.
Oh, right,
law.
right. Oh, good.
Yeah,
I feel like it doesn't always seem to like work.
yeah, it probably is not
just-
as strong as some people might like it to be, but
There we go.
I can't remember. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something that Burlington does, and I think Springfield, Vermont does too, and that is instead of having a separate transit for schools, school bus system that actually kids learn to ride the public transit system to school, and that it saves on a lot of cost because you're not running 2 different systems. Obviously, Chittenden County has a lot of different schools, and the current transit system doesn't really work because everybody's going to Burlington.
Right.
But it is something that's been studied at the state level, and whether it really makes sense to run school bus systems.
There's a bunch of high school kids on White Street that actually catch the bus to the high school.
They do?
It's the norm in Europe. It's way easier than waiting for the school bus.
Yeah.
So.
I was kind of swinging around this way, but go ahead, Jessica.
Well, I guess I just want to say a couple of things. One is my husband he works at UVM, we live near the airport, so he walks or bikes year round, even though it's another different city. One thing that he's noticed a lot, he's gotten grazed by multiple cars on his commute and has just noticed like a big safety issue, and that maybe our proactive policing has gone down and people's texting has gone up, and it's just gotten less safe over time, even with facilities like bike lanes. So I think that that's like a big concern. How can we get our drivers educated and maybe scared of getting pulled over? I mean, whatever it takes to kind of make that experience more helpful. Also, like thinking about more off-road routes. Like, I mean, there could be a great route like through Centennial Woods to connect like parallel on that side of the highway, so you don't have to go all the way into Winooski or all the way over to Williston Road to kind of connect through. And then my other point, we haven't gotten to the climate resilient piece, but
Go ahead.
as a water engineer, I feel like there's parts of our infrastructure we could make more resilient with like bridges and culverts that are right sized and, kind of storm resilient as we're replacing them. And then those can even kind of help with connectivity of wildlife as well. So thinking about like how our road network can kind of work better with our rivers and streams and wildlife crossings, as well as kind of the people that we're trying to get along the road itself, kind of how those crossings may be improved.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I think one of the kind of principles I'd love to see in this comprehensive plan around inclusivity, but also maybe human-centered, is the 880 concept about designing our roads and facilities for 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds. And if you design for both of those, you will help everyone else in the middle.
Yeah.
And so, kind of thinking of, is this good for an old person or good for a kid? Kind of helps everyone. It's good inclusive design. And then two, I think currently, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is that the 3-foot passing law isn't necessarily a law in Vermont. It's a recommendation in certain parts.
I think it is in statute.
It's in statute as a recommendation.
Oh, the way it's written is sort of.
So it's unenforceable, give or take. So maybe, some way to address close passing of vulnerable users could be to lobby either the state or do it individually as a city, but actually make it a law that the 3-foot passing rule.
So it's important, a little more enforceable. Right.
Because at the moment, all you do is get a slap on the hand for being a little close.
So what about climate resilience and transportation? And, I think that goal is really, there's resilience, which is about adapting and being able to handle the disruptions that are caused by climate, extreme weather and other side effects of climate change. And then there's, trying to mitigate, reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, I think that's both part of it. Like, how do you think the city plan should be thinking about that? I mean, what's the role of transportation in helping the city in that direction? And I know there's lots of strategies already, but any thoughts about that? Because we're getting relatively close to the end of our session tonight. We haven't really talked a lot about it. And I think we can stay a little bit longer because we got started a little bit late. But anybody want to bring up anything about climate resilience?
Well, I think if you're incorporating the 2022 climate action plan,
we're good.
And that had a heck of a lot of transportation related pieces that directly relate to climate. So that's a good.
That was your point, Michael.
Yeah, one of them was reducing emissions by making better use of the school bus system and making it either difficult or expensive for all these dozens or hundreds of kids who go to school in their own car or are driven to school by their parents when we've got a perfectly good and comprehensive school bus service here. It's also an equity issue because the ones who ride the bus can't afford to have a car of their own. So encouraging everybody to use a school bus service or making it difficult for them not to would go a long way in both directions, both climate resilience and equity.
Right. Yeah, Ryan, go ahead, and then Colin, I'll come back to you.
The school right now, they're starting to consider if they actually have rolling no pickups from the bus because they don't have reliable staff for the busing system. So they may start having different neighborhoods have to drive the kids to school certain days because it's not reliable anymore.
Is that the school bus? Just the school bus is not reliable? Is that what you're saying? Or the
Staff
Just send a survey around that we actually filled out tonight, asking parents which days can you drive morning or afternoon because of shortage of staffing.
So that's an issue that needs to be addressed, but the strategy is still a valuable one to kind of look into.
And that's in the climate action plan.
Just falling behind. No, it's okay. Did you want to talk about that specific point or?
Well, I guess just to one real, yeah, it's a specific relate to what
Yeah.
I think we also have to sort of slow down and be curious as to why sometimes people drop their kids off at school versus park them on the bus, you know, like, I gotta get to work, I gotta make sure he's at, you know, my kid's at school, you know, like, I think being careful to implement something that's more punitive too quickly is gonna hurt families.
Not punitive,
Okay.
encouragement.
Right, okay. But they might, here's the messaging piece. So they might experience that as punitive, you know, like, so I really kind of want to think about like,
Right.
you got to bring, you know, kind of to what Mike's point is about, there's a whole bunch of people who didn't sort of participate in this process. And even though they didn't participate, we're still going to have to bring them along, right? And so there's
Right.
going to be a lot of messages. So really trying to kind of word it more carefully or kind of bring people along in a way that makes them want to do it and not feel like resentful and, you know, passive aggressive.
I think the messaging is, you know, about everything, not just this particular topic is important and not create a us versus them sort of dynamic. I'm going to go with Colin since he's been waiting. Go ahead, Colin.
So I guess so for the climate and resiliency thing, I was noticing at least from the summary point that the emphasis was on energy efficiency, like increased energy efficiency, which I don't disagree with. Like, yes, it's absolutely important to like make things more energy efficient wherever possible, and of course that's very obvious in the transportation sector when we're talking a lot about hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess I feel that at the end the ultimate goal is reducing energy consumption. And energy efficiency is absolutely part of that, but that's only part of that. So, like, for example, like, yes, we want to encourage people to use more efficient vehicles and stuff like that, but in a lot of cases, it would be even better still if the person just didn't, or we just drove less. And of course, obviously, yes, bicycle and pedestrians, yes, we all know that gets cars road. But beyond that, though, I think there's also the element of like many people will have to drive. That is a fact. But how far they have to drive isn't necessarily fixed in stone. And there are things we can do as a city to try to like reduce like how far away are goods and services from where people actually live, which of course ties into zoning, how the road network is built to enable trips to happen efficiently so you don't have to drive more. So I think like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, we want our car fleet to be more efficient, but like the better still is we also want less miles driven total and just try to like keep trips short, keep trips less frequent, and that also reduces traffic. So I guess in terms of how it relates back to the city plan is I feel like I would love to see the language really emphasize that the end goal is to reduce our overall energy consumption and that increasing energy efficiency of our transportation network and all other things is one of a myriad different ways we can do that. And we need to kind of make sure that the language reflects that so that if we're trying to, in some cases, perhaps have a project that might prioritize just energy consumption and doesn't really care about efficiency, that is still in alignment with the city's comprehensive plan, or whatever we're calling it now.
Colin, just a very quick clarification. I don't think I'm on the camera, but here I am. There is in the climate action plan, a reduction in vehicle miles traveled is also one of the goals and the metrics. So it's the efficiency of the vehicles, but also, as you're saying, approaching both the efficiency of your transportation and reducing the miles that you're having to be transported are both in that climate action plan.
Okay, good. Yeah. I guess I was reading the city plan 2024, which I think had the language of just talking about efficiency. But yeah, as long as sorry, I hadn't read the climate resilience plan as well.
I just wanted to point that out as a clarification.
Cool.
You're on the same page. Go ahead, Michael.
Linked to vehicle miles traveled was density.
Right.
In the climate action plan, they're linked together. And so if you don't have density, you can't reduce your vehicle miles traveled. So you've got to have them both. Right. And we were looking at 5, minimum of 5 dwelling units per acre, or maybe more, up to 12.
Go ahead and I'll.
Yeah, along the like school bus front, the school bus is kind of something where you want the vehicle miles to increase because you want them to be able to get to every corner of the city. And so it's more a matter about efficiency. So I would hope there was some kind of pieces within that about electrifying the school bus fleet.
It started already.
It has, and they're great. And my kid rides
Yeah,
the number
but
11.
One busload of kids is equivalent to about 10 carloads.
Totally. So if you have newer, more efficient buses, they will be desirable for the kids to use them instead of a 1970s diesel bus that smells like fumes. My kid stopped riding the bus because of fumes. I think, by electrifying the school fleet, it might be an incentive to get more people back on the bus and help with the efficiency component, because that's not a vehicle we want to take off the road. It's a vehicle we want on the road to take 10 more off the road.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep. And although I saw that Casella does have one electric trash pickup truck, I really don't understand why we need to have trash pickup every week. It seems like there's way too much trash
4
going.
different companies.
There's 4 different companies, and every week, and it just seems like that could be a pretty simple savings that would also save cost, save a lot of fuel and a lot of noise and stuff like that, to just say blanket only every other week. And, neighborhood associations pick one hauler.
This came up under one of the other topics too. Maybe it was climate change when we were talking about climate change. Go ahead, Ryan. And then I guess what I'd like to do is, if everybody has any final thoughts, big thoughts they want to kind of bring up, we can kind of start to wrap this up tonight. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what you're saying and throw some more weight behind that, because St. Albans tried to do that and it was shot down at the state level. But South Burlington is a much more affluent and powerful municipality. If South Burlington tries to do a project that gets pickup in neighborhoods to the density where one vehicle picks up everything instead of many trucks coming and skipping houses as they go through, a system like that could be really effective at reducing that kind of pollution.
Maybe it's a regional and solid waste district kind of problem to solve. But yeah, go ahead.
No, you can contract to do something like was suggested. Yeah, where I live, trash is picked up once a week, but recycles are picked up every 2 weeks. So not every week, all the time. We wanted to cut back on that.
And Burlington as a city picks up their recycle. There's no recycle contractors that do recycling in Burlington, and they're in CNG vehicles. So you get to control the vehicle type if you control the up to.
Okay. Any other thoughts, folks, that did we miss something important that you wanted to say or didn't get a chance to say tonight? Yes.
Just one thing about vehicle charging. This would be under opportunities. My understanding is that Green Mountain Power is looking into renting vehicle charging stations, which would be very good from an equity standpoint, because there's a lot of multifamily housing where it just is not possible for the owners to put in that many charging stations. And you need to have a business model that says, okay, you want one, we'll come and do it. We can charge, the customer for it. It doesn't have to be charged to the building owner.
I know the state has a program for charging stations at family dwelling units, and I don't know exactly where it stands right now, but it was under development when I left, and so hopefully there'll be some opportunities there. Any other big thoughts tonight? Kelsey, did you want to say anything to wrap it up?
No, not really. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We do have 3 more of these meetings of our 11. We've done 8 now, and we have 3 left. Tomorrow is the Southeast Quadrant neighborhood or geographically focused meeting. Next Wednesday is the housing meeting, and next Thursday is the Southwest geographic meeting, which is, Shelburne Road, Farrell Street, Queen City Park, the Orchards, and every little neighborhood
West
in
of
between.
Spear.
West of Spear, yes. So those are our 3 meetings that are left. These are our official public meetings. As you know, you go back to that timeline that I showed. These are our initial input things. And then in the next few months, we'll be cycling back through committees and staff departments and the planning commission. All of those meetings are open to the public, whether it's the Bike Ped committee meetings or the planning commission or the city council when we get to there. So the public is always welcome to make further comment there. There's also an online poll on the city plan website. If you go to the city website and then there's a drop-down menu for government and it says City Plan 2024, you'll find more information there, and an opportunity for just further written comment if you wanted to submit that through the website. If none of that catches your fancy, you still have something you'd like to share. My name is Kelsey Peterson. My email is Peterson, sorry, I stuttered there. kpeterson@southburlingtonvt.gov. You can email me. You can email planning@southburlingtonvt.gov. You can call our office, 846-4106. Come to City Hall. So many ways to reach me. If you have something to say, I'd love to hear it. But again, thank you everybody for participating today. Thank you for all your thoughts. Hope to see you again as we go through this process.
Thank you. Very good.
So southeast is this week and southwest is next week.
Correct.
Okay, just the other paper contradicts that, like, or the bulletin in there. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
there is a typo in the other paper, unfortunately.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.